Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, thank you. Hey, welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. Today's show is really important to me. As I click another turn around the sun this June and become 65, hey, I'm on Medicare now. How do you like that? I don't have to pay near as much for my health insurance. And it's no bargain for me anyway, because they never ever pay for the blood work that I want to order. I'm not on any medications. So, you know, I am saving some money. There's no doubt about it for services that I really don't use. But I'll be 65 in June. And I am seeing some advanced aging from the past 3 years. My lifestyle, my inability to sleep properly, all things that I fixed when I was 39 years old, the first time my body was destroyed and ravaged. But luckily, I don't have any heart problems like I had back then. But I'm going to have to do this again. And today's discussion is going to help me lay out the roadmap for what I plan on doing. Before we get started, I have to thank my title sponsor, and that's Legendary Foods. Their new sweet rolls are unbelievable. If you would like to eat a Cinnabon, but you know you can't because it's garbage, you can now turn to Legendary Foods and their sweet rolls. They have a cinnamon that emulates a Cinnabon, a chocolate, and a wild berry. But here's the magic. 1 gram of sugar, 20 grams of high-quality dairy protein, and 5 net carbs for those of you who are low-carb like me. Get them. Get enough for your kids to eat, because they will love them, unlike a lot of other healthy stuff that they won't. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary. Use the code SHR10 to let them know that you learned about them here on the podcast. And now, without further delay, open up the mic. And we are with Dr. James P. White. How are you, Dr. White?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Good. This is good science. I like this kind of stuff. Because people think anti-aging is about vanity and chasing younger girls. And if you're going through a divorce and you're in the 50s, that's not a horrible thing. But really, anti-aging is about staving off age-related diseases that all people think you've got to get as you get older. Isn't that really the case here?
Yes. And the more and more we study it, we're seeing that this isn't the case. You can push the aging, so to speak, out a little bit, and then there's things, unfortunately, that lifestyle and now that we know stress can unfortunately pull some of that susceptibility to those diseases a little earlier than you would have planned. But no, it's very fluid and chronological aging, of course, is the driver, but we don't have to accept age, and we can push it out a little further as we figure out how it all works.
You know, when I was a kid, I heard my mother and father refer to certain people, family members, as having a clear head. In Italian, we say capofrisco. And that person that they're always talking about was carefree. They were carefree people. And they aged really well, too, as a result. I'm just making that connection right now. And you talk about stress. Today, all of us carry heavy stress, and a lot more of it as a result of the conditions the United States is in. People are worried about war. People are worried about China. It's like, from an evolutionary perspective, seeking out the danger in our environment was a critical strength. But now we perceive things thousands of miles away instead of just in our local environment as danger. We're all living in a soup of stress today, aren't we?
Absolutely. We know too much. It was a lot simpler, pre-internet and everything else. You're just worried about your own world and your own, family circle. Now you're just bombarded, and it's really, that is life. I guess our new challenge is to just avoid getting all of that, stressed out with all the information and all the news that is now presented to us, and not be concerned if you can do that. A lot easier said than done.
Right. And cell phones and the internet have made it at our fingertips. People turn to watch horrible
it's everywhere.
stuff. Yeah.
It's
and we gravitate towards horrible stuff. We gravitate towards people fighting. We gravitate towards arguments. We gravitate towards stuff that will automatically raise your stress levels. Mm-hmm. What about caffeine? So I am in the throes of kicking caffeine. I abused it when I was powerlifting. I began to take huge amounts, silly amounts, reckless amounts of caffeine, and it lasted for a decade or over a decade. And now I'm feeling the repercussions of it. Isn't caffeine just stress in a pill or a bottle or your choice of delivery system?
In a way, it's a stimulant, right? It doesn't affect everything as a physiological stress. It's just a part of that chemistry, but it is a stimulant. But the beauty of caffeine is it goes away, right? It's metabolized. Our body gets rid of it. So unless you just keep pouring it on, that's an acute. That's up and down.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you just abuse it and you're just taking it 24/7, yes, you never want stimulants to stay, right? That's not how our physiology works. If you're going to get up here, come on down for a little while. We call that homeostasis. You want to come back to homeostasis.
Right.
So I think in general, caffeine, as long as it's not abused, and I don't know the extent of what you're referring to, but I think it's looking like it's pretty safe if taken under the typical consumption.
Right. So let's talk about your study. What prompted this study? What research preceded this that you were like, we need to do this now?
Yeah, so there was a lot of evidence in both human and the rodent, mostly mice, that different stressors. In the human side of things, different stressors have pushed biological aging. Now, these epigenetic clocks are kind of the forefront of measuring biological aging. Basically, it's a way to look at the different pattern of these biomarkers of methylation. Is this the chemistry on our DNA, and how those different methylation pattern itself on our DNA. As we age, that's a natural aging process, but we can figure out where you are in the slope by the pattern of these epigenetic changes. So some really smart people figured out an algorithm on estimating where you are. This is chronological aging. It's a perfect slope. As we age, our chronological aging goes up. But they figured out that we can predict your biological aging based on these patterns. So that has, and these are now going years back, kind of what they refer to as the version 1 epigenetic clocks. So pro-aging, although it wouldn't shock anyone, right? Anecdotally, I think you just kind of brought it up, that people that are just generally clear of mind versus the stressed people, you can kind of just see it with your own eyes. But from a biomedical perspective, we can see biological aging driving with different conditions in both human and the rodent conditions. The crux of this study is the reversal of it, right? We were able to get longitudinal studies and see these individuals and these rodents come back from a stressor. And that is what was kind of the crux of the study, and the reason why it's a big splash, because that was always thought that we could reverse, or hoped, but this is kind of the first strong evidence that you can reverse, which opens up really cool ideas of our bodies have the capacity to reverse aging, even if it's a little blip, right? So if we get here and we need to come back here. Now, we don't know if that's 2 years and then you come back. We don't know that yet. They're not that specific. But we do have the capacity to return. And the machinery is there and our resilience is there to come back. Now, there's a million questions on top of that, but that was the finding here is if you can recover. Now, again, the question remains whether is up here or recover, because remember our stress conditions were across the board: surgeries, pregnancy, illness. Those are quite different stressors, but typically upon recovery of that stressor, we observed a reversal of biological aging back. And a lot of times it went back to kind of your pre-stress. So whether this is a physical healing from the surgery itself or psychological, we don't know, but there's the recovery there aspect, and that brings biological aging back.
The when Horvath came out with the Horvath clock, I thought that was really sensible because they were looking at specific markers, blood markers. And interestingly enough, plasma and albumin were two of the critical markers that he derived his perceived biological age. But my problem with it was that people were going out there and selling biological age testing like it was real. And what I mean by that is, let's say the average age of this specific individual is like 87 years old. Let's say we establish that that's the best you're going to do, 87, and you are already 65, and you do all these different things to lower your biological age to 45. It doesn't mean you're going to live 100 years because you started out with a known potential to live 87 years. You were 65, now you're 45. So now we just added 20 years to your life. None of that research has been done on humans or rodents to my knowledge. So what really is the value of knowing your biological age other than you won't develop age-related diseases? And should we not change this thing from biological age to health age? What do I want to say? Health longevity or something like that.
Right. So yeah, so the use of the epigenetic clocks to coin the term biological aging is kind of a sticky point in itself, right? Because it's one aspect of aging, and it's really a calculated estimation. There's so that's a limitation, right? That's the one aspect we have to guess our biological age. Otherwise, you have to mine every cell in the body and try to figure out a deeper algorithm. So although it's useful in these algorithms and these clocks are getting better and better, by the year, that is a limitation, right? Just one aspect. Now, have they been proven to longitudinally correlate with longevity and health span? I don't know the answer to that, but I do know I think now that they are becoming commercially available, maybe we can get more data on that. So I just think it's too soon to tell.
So you talked earlier about the research done on parabiosis, which sparked 100 different articles for clickbait. The vampire, anti-aging protocol. Talk about that. Let's revisit that first and how that plays into this.
Yep. So that was kind of one of the results that prompted this study, or at least parts of this study. Several, I guess, decades now. Some really first studies were brought out and showed that if you pair the mice, right, you surgically connect them, and what they refer to anastomosis, they share circulation. So the old mice is seeing young blood, young mouse is seeing the old blood. And some of the first studies came out in, I think, the late or early 2000s. and showed that tissue rejuvenation is markedly enhanced, right? So that started this big boom of the, as you put it, and that kind of stuck the vampire theory of pulling blood, especially in the old individuals. And really the studies were just so robust, and tissue, it helps muscle, and I'm probably going to forget a bunch, but tissue, nervous system, heart, bone, hematopoietic system, and again, I can go on and on. But really, whatever that the youthful circulation came over, it helps a variety of tissues. So, of course, when you have data that's strong, it gets to the lay public. That's how you know the field is moving. And then the public kind of ran away with this thing over the last probably 5 years, and then that's when all these clinics started popping up. And out in California, I think most of them are since shut down. But because of that, the data, the preclinical data was so strong that this youthful potential of the young blood was rejuvenating, mostly in the rodents. There isn't hard data yet in human lines because of the complexity of the system.
Who's going to get an IRB to do that stuff?
To sew two people together, that's going to be a little tough to get through. But the rodent data looks phenomenal. It's something's coming over or diluting. There's several theories of what's the mechanism there. The young blood making the old mouse younger or youthful, that's been shown.
Right.
This study here shows that the old mouse or the young mouse exposed to the old circulation accelerates biological aging. So there are something coming over from the old mouse that's driving its biological age up. But the interesting part is when we detach them, it's able to reset itself. It's able to reset back to close to its chronological age. So it has resilience there to reverse and reset itself. And that's kind of one of the findings in this paper before we moved on to the human cohorts of stress. But to accelerate with that exposure to old circulation, then after detachment and all the youthful circulation returns, that mouse can actually reset itself. Now, what the long-term ramifications are, we don't know, because others have shown that they don't age well. But in that instance, they do seem to reset, at least for a short amount of time.
So the fascination with blood, as my audience knows, started with me at least 10, 11 years ago. When I first stumbled on a study that showed that people who regularly donated blood at least twice a year, not corrected for any type of behavior, overweight, underweight, various diets, smoked cigarettes, didn't smoke cigarettes, they cumulatively had a 7% increase in lifespan than people who did not donate blood. That fascinated me, right? Because I'm a car guy, and I can only imagine driving my car and never changing the oil, what it would do to the car, wearing parts down and stuff. I was like, that makes sense. That's a hack. That's a real biohack, I'm saying. This is not some magic beans and magic potions. And then I started doing shows on plasmapheresis. I did a show on parabiosis. I didn't know how realistic it was. And as you pointed out, it appeared that regular blood donations plus youthful blood replenishment, it wasn't sustainable. Like, yeah, you get a bump, but you went back to normal again afterwards. And so what good is that? Then I started to do some research on plasmapheresis. I actually had a fellow who had, at very great expense, $8,000 a session. And a session was over the course of a weekend. And it was two, whatever you want to call it, transfusions, where they took your plasma out, they put synthetic plasma in, and synthetic plasma is nothing but 80% of amino acids and some vitamins that are provided by the liver and fresh saline. And so then I had the Conboys on, Irina and David Conboy from the Conboy Lab in San Francisco. And we started to talk about plasma dilution because that's really their next IRB that they're submitting. And and then I came away from that with a theory that I spoke to a physician friend of mine, Dr. Suzanne Turner from Vine Medical in Georgia, and I said, I'm going to start donating plasma. But what I want to do first is get my liver as healthy as possible, and do some blood work and say, yeah, your liver is definitely better than it was. And then the day of and the day after the plasma donation, to take certain supplements to aid in the replenishment of plasma, really everything that it needs. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to do epigenetic tests, which I have right now, prior. And then I'm going to do that once a week for as many months as I want to, because plasma replenishes very quickly, and see if, in fact, the plasma turnover, which doesn't happen very easily. We turn over red blood cells. There's a lot of theories if people who are metabolically broken have them turn over faster, and that's why A1C isn't an accurate assessment anymore, or it really does take 90 days. We turn over red blood cells, so they're transitioning pretty much all the time, but we don't really turn over plasma. And the convoys pointed out that what they see as the problem in plasma is these mutated proteins that could be what makes the body act like it's older. And when you remove them, but you don't replace them with with an unhealthy liver, that maybe there's a chance that plasma dilution has some value. That's kind of really exciting to me, but it all comes back to the blood theory of aging, in my opinion. It's like you accumulate stuff in tissue, but you accumulate it in tissue after the blood has no more room for it, and it goes, I got to get you out because there's more coming in. Speak about this metabolic debris approach to aging.
Yeah, so there's kind of two aspects of what you were kind of bringing up. So one, the giving blood, right? That is going to drive more proliferation and increasing your blood cells, right? So most of the time, when you drive kind of tissue to regenerate, it defaults itself back to this, like, I guess you can say, a younger or more regenerative aspect. You were talking about powerlifting. Older people, when they work out, you break up the muscle. That's how we repair. The muscle gets, quote unquote, younger, right? So anytime we need to cycle on something, and it defaults kind of to this developmental side, and you renew. So that's one aspect of kind of a potential mechanism that you're talking about. So if you give blood, you're going to drive the proliferative response, that heme system, to increase new blood. Mm-hmm. So that's one mechanism there. Now, to the convoy theory, that's half the puzzle, right? Everyone kind of is debating, well, is it the lack of youth factors, or is it the development of these pro-aging factors? And their work, and it's always well done, and they've gotten some great publications showing that if you just dilute, so that supports this pro-aging factors. I would imagine it's a combination of both, but there's definitely a large body of evidence that the body develops, whether it's, you call them aging factors or toxins, however you want to classify it, but it's just byproducts of whether it's incomplete metabolism, maybe the proteins themselves get modified, and they're just not good for our biology, and they need to be cleared. And then typically other systems should clear them, but if they're getting older as well, then there lies the problem. So if you, in theory, if you just take them away, that should take away at least that aspect of that aging stimulus. And it's always easy in biology, if something's wrong, and then remove it, right? It's a lot easier than to fixing it and putting it back. So if there's an aging factor, like the convoys have proposed, in the blood, you can just filter it out. Then that's great. I hope that is that straightforward. That would be a great approach. Otherwise, you have to find the youth factor, which is hard, and then replace it.
So my plan is, as part of this approach, is to leverage the magic of thymosin beta 4, a thymic hormone that has been shown in numerous studies to have the ability to kind of switch on neonatal genes that were responsible for building the organs and tissue in the first place. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but in a man my size, 5 milligrams. This was done in rodents. A 5 milligram shot once a week has a profound effect on reducing through actin sequestration, reducing fibrotic tissue buildup in the body over time. But also, it's been shown that it turns on the blueprint for these organs and that were occurring in the first place in the womb to build the brain, to build the kidneys, to build the heart, and all that. So my theory is, and again, I have no accreditation. I don't have to worry about somebody taking my license away because of what I'm saying right now. But in my theory is, if I can remove the gunk and then turn switches on to produce the good things that are missing and making sure my liver is healthy to give back the appropriate components that come from the liver, that I should have some measurable results that I would hope to see in epigenetic testing as I experiment with this. You think I'm crazy?
No. In theory, that makes perfect sense, right? If you take away the aging factors, and liver is the key organ that contributes the majority of the blood proteins, right? When we say all these factors, and a lot of it's metabolites as well. And we're starting to see these little, what they call extracellular vesicles are starting to become a big buzzword, but the liver is the main secretor of all this. If you can now rejuvenate and drive a more youthful secretion pattern from the liver and clear out all the aging factors, then I think you're getting somewhere there. Now, what we still don't know, because a lot of this work is done in mice, and it's it's acute, it's short term, and we don't know how it translates to humans. We don't know how much do you need to dilute daily? Do you need to do it once a month? Is one every 6 months good enough? We don't know that yet, but it does give hope to, can we eventually filter and then replenish? That's the key, right? You want to take away the bad and make sure the good are still coming in.
The only thing that sucks about donating plasma is most of the places that take your plasma, first of all, they will pay you. If you go once a week, they will pay you upwards of $300 a month, because this is where, when I was a kid growing up, and my mother and father would go to the Bowery in Brooklyn to look for lamps. They were known as like the best place to go and buy chandeliers and stuff like that. And there was the Bowery Bums there, and there was always plasma donation facilities there, because these guys would walk in, they donate plasma, they give them $50, they go out and get drunk. Like hardly the plasma I want, right, by the way. I don't want it. But the irony is that if I could find a place that would take my plasma, that's not a Skid Row type of environment, I would love that, because I would go at least, I plan on going once a week, because they say you can actually go twice a week. That's how quickly plasma replenishes. And I don't want to go twice a week because I don't want to have to go down to those places twice a week. But if some clinics would get wise to this experiment and take plasma, I think there would be a real opportunity for average people to give this a go.
Yeah. The problem with that is people take it, and, the old, well, if one works, I'll take 10. And you need the plasma in the body, right, to keep pressure, keep that cardiovascular system going. So I would fear that people would really just drain themselves out, like we do, two's good, I'll do it, twice a day. But again, going back to the general theory, yes, you're driving a proliferative stimulus occasionally, and that's all you need. I don't think you need, it's like muscle damage. You don't want chronic muscle damage, but you do resistance training once a week. That muscle stays turning over and it's active. If you stress the system once a week, once a month, I'm not sure but that's what you're getting at. And in theory, once again, that would be a stimulus to rejuvenate those cells and keep everything kind of new and youthful.
We're going to take a break, and when we come back, I want you to talk about the things that you see as doable and reasonable for people to reduce stress. And I also want to talk about something that I learned the hard way. It took me decades to become fat and unhealthy, and it took me probably almost the same amount of time to become youthful again. I mean, I've had doctors tell me, like, what you did was reverse your aging, which feeds to your discussion here. Like, what is reasonable and what is a reasonable amount of time to expect? Because most people want to look good for their 50th wedding, high school anniversary, and it doesn't happen that quickly. So let's talk about that when we come back, okay?
Got it. Sounds good.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more Superhuman Radio. Remember those rectangular toasted pastries you used to love when you were a kid? Well, Legendary Foods has just made them better. The new cake-style tasty pastry is like nothing you've ever had before. With 20 grams of high-quality protein and less than 1 gram of sugar, you'll feel like you're cheating, but you're not. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off your purchase of tasty pastries. Now available in cookies and cream, red velvet cake, birthday cake, blueberry, strawberry, brown sugar cinnamon, and hot fudge sundae. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use code SHR10 today. Hey, this is Carl Lenore. I am the inventor of GunLeash. Over 500,000 handguns are lost in the United States every year. If you carry a gun like I do, you are 300 times more likely to lose your gun. And 15% of those guns will end up in criminals' hands and used in the commission of a crime. GunLeash solves that problem. GunLeash is a patented, no-tracking proximity device the size of a postage stamp. It will alert you as soon as your gun is outside of your range, so you can never leave your gun behind. To learn more and to be notified when GunLeash is available at the end of January, go to gunleash.com and get on our mailing list. GunLeash. Never lose your gun, never leave your gun. You went off the wagon big time at the end of the year, meeting all those family obligations and eating and drinking things that you usually don't. In order to start the year off right, you have to get back to square one. All that partying and stress depletes magnesium. Magnesium Breakthrough is more effective than any other magnesium on the market today to help you get your magnesium levels back to where they need to be. That's because Magnesium Breakthrough has 7 unique forms of magnesium. It's the new year, and if you want a new you need to replenish the magnesium in your body quickly. Go to shrnetwork.biz/magbreakthrough and use the code SHR10 for 10% off today.
Dogs should be powered by fat and protein, not carbs. That's why Visionary Pet makes low-carb, ketogenic dog food for dogs of all breeds and life stages. From kibble to freeze-dried and even low-carb treats, all Visionary Pet recipes are very low-carb, ketogenic, and made with 100% real meat protein. Shop now and use code SHR for 20% off your first order today. Your dog deserves the lifelong benefits of optimal nutrition. Make the switch to Visionary and see why smart dogs eat low carb.
This is the Superhuman Channel, doing reps with the weight of the world.
Welcome back. We're talking with Dr. James White, and we're talking about reversing aging. Really, a real sincere discussion. So let's start off with the time people need to expect to see results, because most of us think it's going to happen in weeks or months of dedication, and it often takes about as much time to reverse aging that it did to influence it, right?
Sure. I guess that would all revolve around the extent, how far you let yourself go, right? Whether it's health, whether it's weight. You kind of gave an example of how long is it going to take? You gain 30 pounds and you need to lose the 30 pounds. That's an easy, right? Because that's a metric. You step on the scale, I've put on 30, I want to get back. The problem lies in more of, some of the stuff we can't measure. It's the stress. It's the lifestyle changes that we don't know how to recover from, except just saying, I think I'm okay. You hear that a lot. How are you feeling after that? I think I'm all right. And we don't have a metric for that, right? So how do we get back from that? And that's kind of the open-ended question from not only from our data that shows that you can accelerate and then come back. Then there's the question of individual, right? So some people can recover quicker. They have more resilience to quickly recover. There's a lot of individual variability in how much we go up and how much we can come down. And there's a lot of questions on why that is. Why can you tolerate the same stress and I can't? And then you can recover from that and I can't. So there's a lot of heterogeneity in there that I think holds a lot of the answers on some of the biomedical markers of stress and recovery. So maybe we can get something to measure versus, something as easy as weight gain, because if you gain the weight and you bring it back, okay, you're back to, quote unquote, the health that you wanted to. But if you're still stressed, are you all the way there? Is job stress still, is family stress still there? And then how much does that contribute to the biological aging? So there's a bigger soup than we initially thought of. A lot of times you think, diet and exercise. But, you brought up in the beginning of the show there, sleep, general tone of stress, social interactions. Like, I think that the general concept of stress-free and kind of what you can help biological aging, I think the ingredients are a little bit more than, the blood work that you get from the doctors. Well, your blood pressure's good and your weight's great. I think there's a lot more to that. And I think we're just starting to know that and trying to get metrics that can measure things beyond that, what you can just find in a blood test.
I think doctors are doing patients a great disservice when they check blood glucose without checking insulin or C-peptide, because there's evidence that people can go a very long time with hyperinsulinemia and present moderately great blood sugar. Oh, but their pancreas is working at a 90% duty cycle to keep that pretty good blood sugar level.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is, we now know that when it comes to neurological effects on small blood vessels and vasculature, which are really an issue in today's society, insulin is the damning, not the blood sugar. Insulin is what causes small blood vessels to constrict. Insulin is at the root of many people who have hyperinsulinemia also have tinnitus, and they're taking vitamins for it. But tinnitus is often a result of the blood vessels to the mechanisms of hearing being choked off. And you can prove this yourself. If you jut your jaw out and really tighten it up, you'll start to feel the wheezing and the ringing in your ears because you're choking off blood vessels. I really think that if more people understood the importance of keeping insulin low, that would add to less wear and tear on the body. Any thoughts?
And, I think it's a perfect example of using a metric that you go and base your health on, right? You go and here's your glucose, but there's a lot more layers to that. And if we're going to use that example, that insulin could be 5 times as high, and that can say, well, yes, you're controlling blood sugar, but something is trying to compensate. So let's try to figure out why. So let's back up. And that's the same thing as a lot of the metrics that we get. That's our only markers. So I think that there are other contributing factors to not only blood glucose, of course, which is a little bit more complicated, but just generally. I mean, we're kind of stuck in the general aspects of health that I think the same blood panels have been used for a long time now. And I would imagine there's some improvements there to get a more global health check. What those are, I don't know. But
physicians will check ferritin, but that's not an accurate assessment of iron in the body, because ferritin is a protein produced by the liver, which can be produced in the absence of iron intake. If you take high doses of vitamin C, ferritin will go up. So and the reason I bring this up is because excessive iron loads for you may be different than for me, but excessive iron loads have been tied to idiopathic hyperinsulinemia. Like a guy who eats no carbohydrates, but yet his insulin is squirting out like a fire hose. Why? Well, doctors should search for the linkage between iron levels and hyperinsulinemia. Maybe give that person a couple donations over the course of 5 or 6 months and see if the insulin level drops. There's so many. You made a great point. We're learning to repurpose medicine, but we haven't learned to repurpose labs yet. Like we look at this lab for this, but it may be an indication of something else that's worse to have, but we don't look at it that way at all.
Yeah. And I think that's just what we've used for a long time, and it generally works. But I think as we still kind of crack into the different subtleties of aging and all those age-related diseases, I think a little bit more personalized approach will be the way to go in the future. But I'm sure that'll kind of take place sometime coming up.
Organically. It'll happen organically.
Yeah, I do believe that.
Should we all be on beta blockers given the stress levels of living in this country right now?
I would say no, just because of, again, you don't want to counteract stress with pharmacy all the time. You know what I mean? I think the take home is deal with the stress. Don't just drug it. Right?
Meditation. What are your thoughts on meditation?
Yeah. So there's a lot of evidence that shows, profound effects on anti-stress and kind of, and not just, anecdotally talking to people saying, oh, I feel great, but markers of stress and catecholamines and cortisols and everything else. And that's just one approach, right? That kind of yoga or meditation. I think the society, as we alluded to earlier, we're just kind of in a ball of stress right now. We're getting bombarded from all ends. And I do think we have to keep a little bit more thought on how stressed we are and use some ways to combat it instead of just running and saying, I was amazed. I saw a stat the other day where the the anxiety medications even 20 years ago versus today. I mean, it's like 1 out of every 3 people or something climbing that they're giving it out. No problem, because everyone's just, I think you're stressed here. Mm-hmm. And if it's effective, I guess that's one way to do it. But just trying to drug things, I think there's another layer on top of that should be dealt with to try to figure out how to cope, right? Instead of just giving a drug. So no, I wouldn't be throwing drugs at our stress epidemic that we have going on. I think we kind of have to figure out why we're stressed out and then start dealing with it.
So what is your position on time-restricted feeding, since it's supposed to produce lots of value, like sirtuins and so on, and reduce stress? One of the things that time-restricted feeding is supposed to do is reduce stress on the body. Just from that, this is the more fuel you put through your body, the more wear and tear you're providing it. So by limiting eating for an 8-hour window, you do sleep better. I can tell you that. You have any feelings about nutrition?
So nutrition, caloric restriction in general is the most potent anti-aging approach we have. It far exceeds the parabiosis. It far exceeds exercise. In the rodent, we can extend lifespan 20-30% in the rodent. I mean, that's like tacking on what 20 years to a human. So that routinely gives the most robust longevity is caloric restriction. Now, all these time restricted feedings are arguably a form of caloric restriction, right? So even if you just say from 11 to 3, I'm going to eat as much as I can. Very rarely do you eat more than you would if you just ate all day, right? So it is a form of caloric restriction. Now, the argument is it better to consume low amount throughout the day or just cram it in? There's debates on that, and there's some really cool work being done, even here at Duke, on that type of stuff. My gut is the lower calories is the trigger to this. You just force I told you, if you stress the system, a lot of time it rejuvenates, right? It's kind of with your blood example, that hematopoietic has to proliferate and drive. And in doing that, it resets. When you're in this hypocaloric state, your tissues, I do a lot of work at this in my lab, your tissues kind of bring down into this neutral state, and they become very efficient. All these pro-longevity factors, you said the sirtuins, autophagy, all these longevity, energetic pathways come up. So that is a very powerful way to increase all these longevity pathways, and stress and inflammation all come down with it. So that's a huge thing. The problem with that is, are you going to convince the typical American to not eat 20% of their diet? That's not going to happen. But the biology is there and it's powerful, but that's not a translatable approach at this time.
Balancing AMPK and mTOR has been shown to be magical, not leaning towards either or. But the only thing that I've seen that has been performed in humans that has a direct effect on longevity and health span is the noble pursuit of gaining strength and maintaining strength. You can look at studies that go back to the University of in the California VA Medical Center. They did a longitudinal study over 20 years, just under 20,000 men. The study was very simple. Every time this guy came in, whether it was for prostate cancer, whether it was for any injury, they brought him into the lab. They had him do a leg press. They recorded what the leg strength was at the beginning, and they recorded the leg strength was at the end of 20 years. And the guys who were the strongest and remained the strongest were still alive at the end of the study. And the guys who were the weakest and got weaker over the time, and we've had everything from assessing grip strength with longevity. The only thing that we can point at that's actually been done in humans is the noble pursuit of maintaining strength as you age. Yes. And that requires eating. But I understand we've done shows where we showed that autophagy has to pulse. If mTOR turned on constantly all the time, bad thing. But the same thing with starvation diets and in humans, not in rodents, because we both know that some things we get right with rodents and some we don't. But the only thing that's been done in humans is maintaining strength. And it makes sense, right? We talk about viruses being strong. Oh, it's strong. We can't kill it with this antibiotic. So why doesn't that become part of the message through the medical orthodoxy? Like maintaining your strength as you age is critical.
Well, it is. I mean, it's really, all of our geriatricians here at Duke, really push strength training as, with older adults. I mean, that is a huge correlate to health span, right? Mm-hmm. So, you can predict just somebody, some of the my colleagues here in geriatrics, they can predict health span of next year on just, does the person need assistance getting up and out of the chair, right?
Yes.
75-year-old comes in and, oh, sorry, I'm getting off the golf course, and they're running in, I would bet that they have some health span left.
Right.
Whereas same person, same age, needs to be helped in by a family member and lowered into a chair, and they're already starting to see some age-related issues. they're not going to have the resilience to cope with much. So, but strength, maintaining muscle mass, is a huge predictor of health span.
Yeah.
And it's not the most potent one.
I want to take our last commercial break. When we come back, I want to talk about methylation, because even I don't understand the role of methylation at the end of the day. So I'd like to wrap up with that. Is that okay?
You got it.
All right, sit tight. I would easily say that I am the hugest proponent you will ever meet to doing anything that will improve the quality of my sleep. And that's because sleep is linked to just about every metabolic disorder we see in our population today. One of the easiest things you can do to improve the quality of your sleep is to get a pillow that can be shaped into the exact form factor that allows you to get your best night's sleep. And that is MyPillow. I've been sleeping with MyPillow for a few years now, and I can tell you that when I have to travel and stay in hotels, I don't get a good night's sleep because I don't have MyPillow with me. Right now, you can save up to 60% off of everything offered to improve the quality of your sleep at shrnetwork.biz/mypillow when you use the code SHR. Or you can call toll-free 800-889-4938. And remember to use code SHR to save up to 60% off of everything at their website. BPC is one of the most amazing supplements you can use. It's been shown to increase the speed of recovery, heal the gut, and do so many other things. BPC stands for Body Protection Compound, and it's a naturally occurring peptide in the body. Used by professional athletes and weekend warriors alike, there has always been an obstacle in the way of average people using BPC, and that is it was injectable only. Not any longer, thanks to NutriNeeds. We now have oral BPC, and it works. Go to shrnetwork.biz/NutriNeeds, NutraNeeds. Use the code SHR and save 10% off your bottle of BPC. Feel better, recover faster, train harder. NutriNeeds. There are lots of concerns about food supply today. That's why you need White Oak Pastures. White Oak Pastures will deliver food right to your doorstep. You don't even have to go out and be disappointed by shopping in grocery stores. The finest beef, pork, lamb, duck, and more can be found at White Oak Pastures. And now they even have seafood. And best of all, White Oak Pastures has a negative carbon footprint, which means that you don't have to feel guilty for eating your ribeye. Go to shrnetwork.biz/white oak and use the code SUPERHUMAN to save 15% off.
Hey guys, it's time to change your f***ing underwear, and it's time to change to Sheath. Sheath's underwear's revolutionary designs allows your man parts to hang the way they would naturally hang if you were not wearing underwear. And this improves the blood flow throughout the day to the twigs and berries. If you've never experienced wearing a pair of Sheath underwear, boy, is there an exciting experience waiting for you. Grab a pen and write this down. Go to shrnetwork.biz/sheath. That's SHEATH. And use the code SUPERHUMAN to save 20% off your first pair. And get this, if you're not completely satisfied, send them back for a full refund. That's shrnetwork.biz/sheath.
You're listening to the Superhuman Channel. Don't hate us because we feel good.
Welcome back. So now we're going to do a tutorial about methylation. What can influence methylation? What can improve it?
So methylation happens in our biology. It's not a quote unquote bad thing. It's what allows or it dictates what genes are expressed, right? So it kind of gets this bad name because it's linked to these epigenetic clocks, but you don't want your brain cells becoming a liver cell. You don't want your heart becoming skin. That's all methylation, right? It's because every bit of DNA is in every cell, right? So how do we figure out how to make a brain cell and make a skin? That's all methylation, right? So that is a way to silence certain genes and allow others to be transcribed and made into proteins and whatnot. So methylation is a way to block the DNA. You physically cover the DNA, so you can't transcribe and turn those genes on.
Mhm.
So again, that is a natural process, not a good or bad thing. That's just, we need it. Our cells need it. Now, when we age, for some reason, this DNA methylation increases, and it blocks the transcription and gene expression of genes we want and need in the cells. And this is what they call a hallmark of aging. But this pattern continues, and these methylation, this chemistry, they block different parts of the DNA, and we can somewhat predict on what they block as we get older, hence the clocks and the algorithms. But it is a aging phenomenon that as we age, these methylation blocks certain part of the DNA on the genes that we still want the cell to use and function. So why that happens, I don't know. And how do we prevent it? Well, there's a lot of work being done to target what they refer to as demethylases, so the proteins that pull them back off, right?
Mhm.
So you would think, well, if there's too much, pull it back. But the specificity is the problem. If we just unmethylate everything, hence, the cells need a certain amount of methylation to silence the genes that would cause problems. You don't want brain in the heart in the brain, but we want to unmethylate the aging part of the DNA. Now, still trying to figure out how to do that, but in theory, if we can stop the pattern of, like, once we hit adulthood and everything's set, our brain is a brain, heart's a heart, and then we stop that methylation, that's where we want to target, and maybe we can slow the biological aging. But to counteract that aging effects on the epigenome, people are working on it. But that's kind of the hang up right now, is the specific pull and demethylate and allow those genes to keep going and keeping the cell health going and the tissues going. So again, it's not a bad thing, but in aging, it just kind of gets accumulated in spots we don't want it to be. And then we're working on either preventing that or slowly pulling them back off.
Does the liver play a role in methylation? We know that we take methylated drugs to allow the liver not to get them out of our bloodstream as fast. Does the liver play a role in methylation throughout the body? Could it be a contributor to too much methylation, or?
Yeah, so the methylation is within the cells in our respective tissues,
Mhm.
right? The methylation on proteins and metabolites, that's a different beast.
Okay.
That is fine. You're just using that to allow, that protein to cross membranes or being absorbed into different organelles. That's different. What we want is a cell in the brain to transcribe its genes without having a block on it as we get older. So that's a different kind of thought as far as that methylation.
Do you do anything special to for yourself to age better? What is your
My go-to is exercise, and I find personally, I've always enjoyed exercising, and it's a way to wash out, right?
Mhm.
It's a double
double value
approach to me, because by the time I'm done with a good workout, I feel like I can kind of, if anything's lingering from the day, and that's my way of de-stressing. And of course, you get the health benefits, and I like kind of combination resistance and aerobic. Diet works with, I've always paired that with. I started my undergrad in exercise science nutrition, so it kind of beat me over the head with the coupling. If you're going to do one thing and your nutrition's garbage, then you're gonna not get the results. So I've always kind of carried a generally clean nutrition with exercise programs. But I would, as I life evolved, family, career, and stress started to mount up, I do find that exercise is my go-to to kind of keep the stress away and try to, keep
from an evolutionary perspective, one of the books that changed the direction of my show was when I had Dr. Daniel Lieberman on the first time with his book, The Story of the Human Body. And I realized that exercise is an artificial replacement for something we did for millions of years, and that was struggle and work and walk and all this stuff we don't do anymore. So now we have to artificially attain it by going to the gym, doing cardio, lifting weights. But it's funny, like we're so shocked why, I mean, a lot of people are shocked how exercise in general improves the quality of their life and their health. And it's because we didn't have to take a sleeping pill at night, 50,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago. We were exhausted. Yeah. Sleep pressure mounted as adenosine triphosphate was cleaved, and the adenosine got captured in the brain, and we went, oh, I just got to go to sleep. And you sleep so good. Like when I hunt, those nights I sleep good because I walk the woods day and night for a couple days, and I sleep so good. It's not just because I'm out in the country and I'm kind of off the grid. Excuse me. It's more so that I worked all day, and that's what we used to do, and our fathers used to do that. We don't do that anymore. I sit for hours and hours upon end, and then I have to go get a good workout in to kind of make up the debt that I have to pay.
So our bodies are rarely stressed anymore. When you take the typical, what they call the Western diet, which is just a massive amount of calories, and our sedentary lifestyle, we are not stressed, not emotionally stressed, I'm talking about, but metabolically. And that is new to kind of human biology, right? As you just said, we're typically hunter-gatherers. We're wrestling a mammoth. You know what I mean? We're physical. And then food was scarce. You ate when it was around, and you didn't. Winters, you most likely had a caloric restriction, and then you cycled. You lost weight. You needed adipose to get you through a long winter, and you were physical. You were hunting. Our lifestyle, and only really a couple hundred years, which is nothing in our human biology. Now we do very little. We're sitting on our butts and not moving, and just gaining, emotional stress. So it's not a good combination. But we need stress. That's what resets things. Exercise, not only
it's hormetic.
Yes, yep. Not only does it emotionally reset, but it stresses the body. The muscles are working. It needs to adapt, try to get to the next. All right, well, I was tired. I rode the bike. So now the muscles, all this energetics and different genes transcribe, and you reform to be better for the next time. Mm-hmm. But if you're just not doing that, you're just stagnant, you're taking excess calories, and it's not a good combination. So, I mean, the diet and exercise, nobody wants to hear it, because we've heard, diet and exercise. Nobody wants to do that. But really, that's two of the big ones. You have to keep the body moving, and it doesn't have to be crazy. A lot of friends and family think they automatically associate the, running until you drop and heavy weight workouts until, you drag yourself out of the gym. It doesn't have to be that at all.
Right.
A brisk walk, grab a 10-pound dumbbell, just something that your body's not used to. It doesn't have to be crazy. And then just start with that. And that makes 1,000,000% difference. Going from nothing to something is it. Now, if you really love it and you want to keep going, go for it. But going from nothing to something, couple hundred calories of diet restriction, 100 minutes a week, which is, a couple strolls around during lunch. These things are profoundly effective to increase health. And somebody's like, well, I can take a walk around the block for 2-3 times a week. Start with that, and you'd be amazed on just the difference. Because again, we're so far away from where we need to be that starts it. And then that might help with stresses and everything else, and get you on the right road.
It's funny. You said something that I believe strongly. The days I train, I always eat right. The
Yeah.
days I don't train, I have no investment in the day, so it's not important to me. And I think that that's actually something that's part of our DNA. When we work hard, I think Dr. Milind Watfi wrote a book that was another book that changed the direction of the show. And it's called "Of Doves, Diplomats, and Diabetes: A Darwinian Approach to Modern Disease." And these are the things we talked about, like why food makes us fat, because it's usually we work so hard to get food and then we ate it. So the body super compensates and goes, well, we better make plenty of adjustments because this may take longer next time, as opposed to walking to the refrigerator, opening the door, taking out a meal and eating
more.
Yeah. But the interesting thing about this is Joel Green and I, who is the author of The Immunity Code, a great book on weight loss and the immune system, how the immune system tries to stop us from losing body fat. And it's very good. It's sold so many copies of it now. We did a show once looking at extreme diets like the ketogenic diet, for instance. And we talked about how it changes genetic sperm lines and egg lines in mothers and fathers if they're deep into a keto diet and then they have babies. Like, it actually can potentially imprint the baby to be hyper conservative, where everything they eat turns to fat, because your body says you're bringing a baby into a world of insufficiency, not abundance. So we have to build this baby prepared to be starved, because all you're doing is eating, 90% of your diet is fat. And people go, well, that's so many calories, but that's not how the body interprets it. The body interprets it as you don't have abundance. It's you're not feasting all the time. So with that being said, we did one show on, I'm going to mispronounce it, an intact hunter-gatherer population. I think they're in some jungle region, but they're called the Nuiji. And some scientists who studied the Nuiji estimated that they burn 20 to 30,000 calories a day. Now look at the packaging of any processed food today. These values are calculated on 2,300 calories a day. So we are animals in captivity. We're no longer free roaming human beings, because we wouldn't have to diet. We would be walking 20 or 30,000 how many steps a day and burning 20,000 calories a day.
Right. With limited food as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No, it's definitely, we have kind of outpaced our own kind of evolution at the moment. I mean, describing obesity to, somebody 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago, and that would be a foreign thing, because, how would you ever have that much food? Or the laborers burning thousands of calories and with not enough food. So it's a new time for kind of human biology, and we need to adjust accordingly, or figure out a little bit more mechanism to fight it.
We went from in the 1920s malnutrition to overnutrition.
Yeah,
here
very quickly. Yep. So I think we're seeing some of the issues with that pace of change, and that's why we're having such the obesity issues now. But I think modern medicine will help that in a little bit. There's been a lot of work to try to figure out how to stop that.
Well, your study has given me hope that I can bounce back one more time and recapture my youthfulness. I mean it. I'm being sincere, because I thought maybe this is it for me. Maybe it's just going to be a slow slide into home plate now. But
you have control over the slope.
Yeah. And I work hard. I mean, I'm not afraid of training hard. And I'm not afraid of training in general. In fact, my problem is I train too often sometimes, and I get overtrained, and I feel fatigued for a couple days. But I'm going to a good doctor, and I'm going to find the targets that I need to focus on, and I'm going to recapture. It may take a couple years, but I'm a couple years is going to pass no matter what. So I'm ready for it.
Yep, you might as well help that aging out in the next few years.
Thanks for being here, and I hope you'll come back next time you publish something.
Anytime. This is great. Thanks, Carl.
Take care. And we'll see everybody next week with more Superhuman Radio. Right now, because of Gun Leash, I'm only doing 1 or 2 shows a week, not the 4 or 5 like I used to do. So stick with me. Don't forget, share the show. YouTube deplatformed me because they want to silence me. Look at the information I bring forward. I'm not one of these guys. If you take astragalus from the product I sell, you're going to live forever. Your telomeres are going. I bring real scientists and real information, and they punished me. So don't forget to share the show. All right, thanks. See you soon.